Auburn is not a place, it is a people. The loveliest village on the plains is more than a college sports venue, more than a university filled with historic buildings, more than a quaint little southern town. Its worth lies within its people, those that call Auburn home, whether that be for a single day at a time or for a lifetime. Much like our legendary Toomer's oak trees, our stories are the product of a firm foundation laid in the beginning of our Auburn story. These are the stories of the Auburn family. These are their roots.
War Eagle Auburn family, and welcome back to Auburn Roots. This is episode 17 as we continue our journey of exploring and sharing the stories of your Auburn family members. For episode 17, I'm pleased to say this is 2 in a row where we've had a Patreon member, or as we call it, the E2C Network Booster Club, have an opportunity to share an Auburn story. Now, this one's a little bit different. We have an anonymous Patreon member or Booster Club member that has reached out and asked us not to do a expose on them necessarily, but someone else. So it's a little bit of an interesting twist here. Sometimes we expect they want to tell their stories. Some people are just maybe a little bit shy. So this time we get to interview someone through a recommendation in our Booster Club. So that is an opportunity for you, if you're listening out there, if you're a part of the Booster Club, you can either share your story or you can have someone recommended to share their story if they're willing to do so. So let me introduce my guest, the person that was recommended to share their Auburn roots, Miss Taylor Jackson. Taylor, welcome.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing great, and it is good to talk to you in a COVID-19 era where we don't get to see each other all that much, but we at least get to connect this way and actually have conversations about some of the things that we love, right?
Yes, thankfully.
So Taylor, give me this. You know, we actually have a little bit of a connection. We both went to high school, I believe, at the same high school or academy, Macon East Montgomery Academy. When I was there, it was Macon East Montgomery. Is it now Macon East Academy? Is that just the name now?
Yes, now it's just Macon East Academy. It changed. I can't remember what year I was, but at some point when I was still there at Macon, it changed to Macon East Academy.
Can I just say that you are so lucky, because I got so tired of having to say it all the way out every time.
Yes, I know. I was thankful when they changed it too.
It was a mouthful. I mean, Nema kind of flowed off the tongue if you just said it that way, but I would much rather just say Macon East Academy.
Exactly. Very thankful for that.
Yeah, it's a little podunk school, I call it, and I don't mean podunk. I don't mean podunk in like a bad sense, but it's out in the middle of Cecil, Alabama. Like, I don't think anybody really knows unless you're from the Montgomery area where Cecil actually is.
Exactly.
And we're kind of getting to your story a little bit already. But when did you graduate from Macon East?
I graduated in 2015.
Oh, now I feel old. Oh. You're not that far off from me. Well, actually, you are. You're about a decade. Now that I'm thinking about it, you're a decade off from me. So I would imagine some things have changed there in Montgomery and Macon East. Well, I almost said Macon East Montgomery Academy. It's always going to be that way. But let's start with this, Taylor. I want you to kind of give us who you are outside of the Auburn spectrum. I like for our listeners to get to know the person first before we talk about where you and Auburn intersect. So where were you born? Kind of what's your life been like? If you moved around, anything that pops in mind that says this is Taylor's story outside of Auburn, let's hear it.
Okay. I was technically born in Montgomery, Alabama, but I lived in Greenville, Alabama until I was about 5 or 6. And then we moved up to Montgomery and have been there ever since. We actually live in Pike Road right outside of Montgomery. It's about 5 minutes away from Macon East, so not too far. I used to explain Macon East to people in college that we had a cow pasture in the front and a horse pasture in the back. So it literally is in the middle of nowhere. I have 2 sisters and a brother, and they're all Auburn fans too.
Nice.
And my mom is an Auburn fan. My dad, unfortunately, is an Alabama fan. And funny enough, his name is Bo Jackson. So
wow.
We get a lot of laughs out of that.
That is quite the ironic nature that you have in your family. I was about to ask, you were setting up that we're an Auburn family, but usually in every family, at least in the Southeast, there's that one person that just can't get their act together, and we just pray for them so much.
Exactly. He, while I was at Auburn, unfortunately his money had to go to Auburn, even though he did not want it to. So he was a good sport, and he would come, and I think he enjoyed it, but we did not get him flipped to the right side.
Man, I can only imagine what some of those game days were like, whether you were at Auburn or maybe did y'all visit Tuscaloosa any for the games as well?
We did not. My
Thankfully.
mom is a huge Auburn fan, so she never allowed me to growing up. So I just never went. I think the first time that I went for a game in Tuscaloosa was my senior year of college.
Well, at least you've experienced it where you were already solidified in your Auburn fandom, and there was no going back at that point.
Yes.
After seeing the cathedral that is Bryant-Denny, whatever that is, the
Yes.
toilet bowl of the South. Aside from that, I always like to get perspectives on people from where they grow up, on what the Auburn fandom is like in that area. And we've talked to some other people from the Montgomery area before, and there are a couple of episodes that we've had featured here for folks if they want to take a listen. For instance, episode 11 was Avery Dove, and episode 13 was Reagan Ingram. So Taylor's our third person from Montgomery, if I have my list correct. So Taylor, from your perspective, what is the Auburn to Alabama breakdown in the Montgomery and surrounding areas? Is it more Alabama? Is it more Auburn? Or what does that look like to you?
I think it's really half and half. I don't feel like I've ever felt more one way or the other. It's, to me, pretty much everywhere you go, there's going to be some Alabama fans, but there's also going to be some Auburn fans.
I think the Auburn fans tend to be a little bit more vocal, and the Alabama fans tend to be a little bit more showy, if you get my drift, in terms of flags and things of that nature. But Auburn fans, we just tend to down the orange and blue, and there's no mistaking. And I feel like we keep it to ourselves with our celebrating. Obviously we have War Eagle moments that we talk about all the time.
Yes.
But sometimes, that you can tell what part of the country or part of the state that you're in by how exuberant some of our fans are there. So you think it's about half and half, really?
I do.
That's interesting, because I've always leaned that it was still a slight favor towards Alabama, even though it's so close to Auburn. And I got to imagine that you got to go to Auburn quite a bit growing up. So were you an Auburn fan from birth, or was this something that slowly, gradually took over your life?
I was 100% an Auburn fan from birth. I don't really think I had an option. It was going to be that either way. And it's funny because I really was a daddy's girl growing up.
Oh.
So I always ask my mom, I'm like, how did that not happen? Like, how did he not convince me? And she was like, it just wasn't allowed. It was before you were born, like you were going to be an Auburn fan. And my siblings are way older than I am. So my sister was a student here or at Auburn whenever I was growing up. So I went into the student section for the first time when I was like 3 years old. So there was no turning back from that. So yes, I was fortunate enough to be able to visit a lot and get game day experiences and things like that as I was a child.
You see, I love that. I love hearing all perspectives. Whether we've had people on here who were Alabama fans previously, or at least grew up in an Alabama family and kind of chose to go a different way eventually. But it's always good to hear someone that was just, there was no other option. But I'm just fascinated by the whole daddy's girl and him not taking over and instilling you in the Alabama traditions. And I got to ask, I know you love your dad. And, I'll just be honest with you. My mom is an Alabama fan.
Yes.
And, she kind of tried to sneak in there a couple times and do some things. Did your dad ever try any little sneaky things to get you switched around?
Growing up, I don't remember him ever trying to do anything. The only thing that I can remember is when it came time to apply for colleges, and I would get the little postcards in the mail from Alabama, and he would just put them in my room and leave them on my dresser. And he would be like, just apply, you never know what's going to happen. Just apply. Like, it doesn't hurt to do that. And I was like, yeah, but knowing my luck, I'll end up getting way more scholarship money there, and then I'll feel like I need to go there because that's what's paid for. And I don't want to take that risk because I don't think I could do 4 years in Tuscaloosa. So
you actually never did apply to Alabama?
No, I did not.
You just won a lot of brownie points there with me. I had those same postcards slid my way, and I slid them right on into the trash can.
Exactly.
Never even an option to consider it. They could have given me like a full ride. They could have just paid me to be there for the rest of my life and I wouldn't have gone there.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, that's probably what my children are going to have to deal with a father who's just not like going to, wait for the day that the mailbox is full of that stuff and just shreds it up,
Just go ahead and throw it away. Don't even let them see it.
Exactly. So growing up as an Auburn fan, what are some of the memories that you have? Obviously we are going to get to you end up at Auburn University, but growing up as a young Auburn fan, what are some of those memories that you have?
I just remember when I was way younger, always being with friends and family every single weekend in the fall. And I think that's what made me just love football so much, is that it was an excuse for everybody to get together and hang out and eat good food. Even back when I didn't even really understand what was going on or what anything meant. But then as I got older and enjoyed going to football games and things like that, I would say one of my favorite memories has to be the kick six. Like I said, my mom was such a huge Auburn fan that I was never allowed to go to Tuscaloosa or even any of the Iron Bowls growing up, because she just didn't want any part of being around Alabama fans. So the kick six was the first Iron Bowl that I ever went to. And that was just such an incredible experience. And it gives me chills still to think about it. And I will never forget that.
It's always funny to me to hear how many people actually were at that game, because the stadium's only 87,000 people, but I swear that they must
everybody.
Must have put 90 something thousand in there somehow, because the place was so electric, and the fact that you got to experience that as your first Iron Bowl. How are you ever going to be able to top that? Everything else is going to pale in comparison at this point.
Exactly. The only thing that got close enough was, I think it was 2017 when we beat Georgia when they were number one, and then turned around and beat Alabama when they were number one. So that came pretty close, but yeah, nothing will beat the kick six.
That's a pretty close comparison. I will give you that. The kick six stands alone on its own. I was there with you. Maybe we ran over each other trying to get down to the field. How quickly did you make it down onto the field?
I actually didn't go immediately because I was just so shocked at what just happened, and I was convinced that it wasn't real, like something went wrong and they were gonna have to redo it. So I just stood there for a while, like watching everybody else go, and then I was like, okay, I guess this is it, like this is real, it's happening.
Well, let me apologize, because I probably ran over you, because I was done pretty quickly.
I don't blame you at all.
Oh, well, I'm glad you ended up down there, because that was an incredible moment with the Auburn family. And speaking of family, I think one of the things that I love that you brought up was that even though you didn't understand the game of football growing up, what you have the memories of is because of Auburn football, you got to be with your family and your friends at these games, just hanging out, being together. And we say a lot here on Auburn Roots that, Auburn isn't a place really, it is a people. And I think that's what defines the Auburn family, is the actual people that are in it and why they're so important to us. And then that's why it's so special. So to hear you verbalize that as an affirmation of what I always say here on this show, about it being not just a place, not really a place truly, but a people. And that's what makes it so special. So growing up, Auburn fan, no way going back, despite your father being kind of weird, and we'll continue to pray for him. You end up choosing Auburn. Was there any other school that almost kind of got in the way, or did you go think about going somewhere else, or was it always Auburn?
Yeah, at the beginning of my senior year, or actually I think it was the end of my junior year of high school, my first college tour was at Troy University. And so I think just because of the excitement of it being the first one, I was like, oh, I want to go here. And like I said, I came from an Auburn family, and my sister went to Auburn. So I was thinking, maybe I should be different, go somewhere else. I really liked Troy. And then senior year came around, and I went to the first football game of the season, and I was like, yep, this is it. I'm going to Auburn. I don't know why for a second there I changed my mind, but I was quickly reminded of why I love Auburn so much.
Well, it's always good to weigh your options out and see what's the best thing for you to do. And that doesn't make you any less of an Auburn fan if you decide to go somewhere else except the toilet bowl of Alabama. But I will say that I think it was wise of you to at least weigh your options and see what you could do. And thankfully, you made the decision to go to Auburn. and
Yes.
eventually graduate from there. So walk me through some time that you have at Auburn, like your freshman year, or things that you experienced, things that stick out to you in your mind of your time at Auburn.
Yeah, so the second semester of my freshman year, I tried out to be what's now called athletic recruiters. Previously, it was called Tigerettes and Tiger Hosts. So I tried out for that my second semester freshman year at Auburn, and thankfully I made it. And I feel like that's kind of what started my Auburn career and what I did for the rest of my time at Auburn. So that first year I did recruiting for the football team. And then my junior year, I became vice president of outreach for that program. And then my last year, I was able to be president of it. So that was a really cool experience. I would not trade it for the world. I had the most incredible experiences, got to meet some of the most incredible people. So it was really awesome.
See, that's an interesting perspective. We've not had I guess you call an Auburn recruiter now.
It used to be Tigerettes and Tiger Host. And then my first year that I was a part of it, they had changed it to be called athletic recruiters.
Now, was there a reason for that change, or was it just kind of one of those marketing things that we'll never understand?
I think it was because they changed it from being housed in the athletic department to being housed in the Office of Admissions.
Okay.
So it was just that little switch.
Gotcha. So you're recruiting now. Is it just athletes that you're recruiting for Auburn, or is it students in general?
So I primarily did just football, but during the summers we had the opportunity to do students as well. So During the summer I would stay and give campus tours to students.
Oh, so you must be very knowledgeable on all the Auburn history. I could probably quiz you right now and you get everything right, correct?
Maybe not now. I think about that sometimes, like when I come back to Auburn, I'm like, I should know this, but I cannot remember.
I was the annoying kid that on my college tour kept correcting the campus tour guide. And I came back from that day and I was like, I think I made an enemy today because I was like, actually, that's not the case. So
that's hilarious.
Let me ask you this then, because I know one of the things that had to come up on those tours was the War Eagle story. So what version were you taught to teach?
I was taught the version of the Georgia game where the professor had the eagle that he had found and it was wounded. He nursed it back to health and he always carried it around campus. So then he went to that game and the game was 0-0, I believe. And then we were down and the eagle took flight off of his shoulder. And then everybody kept saying, oh, look, that's the War Eagle, the War Eagle, the War Eagle. So then everybody started chanting War Eagle. And then my version was that it landed on the field and it did not die, but I've also heard the version that it died. So
see, I subscribe to the one that it died right as we won the game. I think that's it stretches a little bit, but there's probably some truth in that.
Probably some.
And it makes it seem more like sad and reverent of it and why we do it to this day. And that's kind of the one that I always stick with. But I'm happy to hear that the basis of it is what you all are teaching. Maybe just not some of those more fantastical sides that I like to interject in there.
Yes.
Now, when people would come to Auburn and maybe they're trying to decide as athletes or students, were they often asking, so are y'all the Tigers or the War Eagles? Were you getting a lot of that, or was that not a big question for them?
There were a couple, but it wasn't as common as you would think it was. There were probably, I think after, especially on the campus tours with students, after you explain that story, people kind of get it. But I really didn't have that question that many times.
See, that's one of the things that our rivals like to throw out. So I always wonder, like, people that
we don't know what we are.
Exactly. Like, people like to ask that, and I'm like, well, maybe some of these undecided students and athletes are kind of like, oh, I don't get it, because you'll see a football recruit say, I'm committing to the War Eagles, and I'm like, oh, dude, come on, no,
that drives me crazy.
Don't do that. Or the University of Auburn. I'm like, no, dude, come on, man, you're better than that.
Exactly.
So talk to me about football recruiting. Like, that is something that people get really interested in, especially here in the state and in the Southeast, is football recruiting. And all we see are the stats, the stars, the little interviews they do on social media. But what's it like for you as a recruiter, having them on campus and trying to tour them around? Like, give me like a window into what that's like.
Well, it's usually a whole lot of fun. Just being able to share your Auburn story and why you love Auburn, I think is the really cool perspective of it. Instead of people that are just hired by Auburn walking around and showing them campus, I think it makes it different that we go there and we experience on a day-to-day, and we can actually tell them what being a student is like. And just to see their excitement and hear their questions and be able to say why I love Auburn is a really cool part of it all.
Is there a recruit that has now been a player, current player, or has moved on or graduated that you can remember that was one of your favorites?
I'm trying to think, because my first year was the year that I was actually with the players and hosting them. And then when I was vice president, I was more the operational side.
Overseeing things, yeah.
Yes. So I have to go a while back in my memory. I can't really think of a specific person, but we all just got so close. Even if you technically did not host them, the whole group was always together. So just like remembering each one of those classes and seeing them now on the field is really special.
So you moved on to actually be the president of this organization. That's an incredible feat. And I'm very impressed that you were able to do that, because I'm sure that takes a lot of hard work and dedication, and actually showing that you deserve this position. So is that something that you aspired to be when you first started this, or is it just kind of something that you naturally kind of fell into because you were kind of good at doing this?
I think I aspired to be president from the beginning. I remember one of the first information sessions that I went to before I even tried out, and listening to them talk about the organization and the cool experiences that you get to have. I had kind of decided like that was my organization at Auburn that I wanted to put my all into and give it 110%. So I think like from that moment, even if I wasn't president, I still would have done it for those 3 years, but it was really an honor to be able to give it everything that I had and be rewarded for that.
Yeah, I can only imagine how awesome that must have felt to put all of that hard work in, and then you be rewarded with this this title, obviously, but also the role and the responsibility of overseeing anything. And I don't blame you for not being able to pinpoint a particular player or a recruit, because I'm sure you saw hundreds of them coming through every game, much less every season or every year, you know?
Yes.
So I can only imagine the amount of faces and hands you had to shake and things like that. And speaking of which, you know, how does that work now in a COVID-19 era? Like how would your so let's say you're president still, what would be different, or would you guys still be able to do most of the things just with some of those mask and social distancing regulations?
You know, I honestly have no idea. I am not sure what they are doing this season or how that's working. I imagine it being chaos and definitely different. But yeah, if I were still in it, I would imagine we would be wearing masks and just maybe tuning down the number of people that were invited to every game and trying to spread out as much as possible.
Well, it seems like you already got this figured out, so it sounds like you should still be president at this point.
Hey, I would love that to be my job for the rest of my life.
Wouldn't we all just like to have some job at Auburn and just stay there forever?
Just stay there. It would be great.
It would be awesome. Let's talk a little bit about maybe some academic stuff. What was your major when you first got there? What did you finish with? What did that look like for you?
So my major when I first got to Auburn was physical therapy. I started out in some science classes and realized that probably wasn't the best idea for me. So then I changed to communication disorders, which is speech pathology. And then in that moment in time, you have to go to grad school pretty much if you do speech pathology. And in that moment in time in my college career, I thought that I wanted to be done after 4 years and not go to grad school. So then I decided against that. And then I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So I chose communication, just because it's a well-rounded major. You can do a lot of things with it. So I ended up majoring in communication and minoring in business. And after I graduated, I moved to Atlanta and worked in marketing And then COVID happened, so I moved back home, and now I'm trying to go to law school. So
now, I think you actually picked a really good path for you, just kind of speaking to you here and hearing your experiences. And I find that a lot, that people at Auburn, they'll start with one thing. They'll start getting some maybe, work or volunteer experience in an area, and then that kind of molds and shape what they want to be. So, communications and business, I think that's right up your alley, because not only are you have to be an effective communicator to get people to come to Auburn, or still maybe the chance for them to come to Auburn, but you've also got more or less the business side of it, of being a leader at the top of this organization. So I don't really judge people or think less of them for changing their major. I don't think many people do, because I think it's all about trying to figure out what you want to do for the rest of your life. And I think you probably made a smart switch after having some of those experiences that you did at recruiting. What's with the science classes? What was the hard part about it? Because for me, it was the math classes at Auburn.
Yeah, it was math too for me. Especially, I feel like you probably understand coming from Macon East.
Oh man.
Hopefully
nobody's listening now.
I know. Sorry. But it is a little tougher. We're not as well prepared, especially in the math classes, at least for me when I was there. So yeah, I struggled with math too, but science, I actually ended up doing well. I was miserable the whole time I was doing it. And I know not everything in life has to be fun, but I think that was just how I started realizing, okay, there are other things I can do where I would enjoy my work instead of being miserable and just pushing through, which when you're a freshman in college, I feel like you kind of don't realize that yet. Like you think, okay, this is what I came in with, this is what I have to do, and I got to just push through and make it.
Yeah.
So that was my first realization of, I can do something that I enjoy. It doesn't have to be horrible.
I agree with that 100%. And I think that's how we figure out, just because something's, hard, and doesn't mean you have to necessarily push through that thing, especially if you're not going to enjoy the things that you're leading towards in that major. And I had that same revelation as you, and I didn't make as big a switch as you, but I had to redirect because of those math classes. Statistics, I will never,
goodness,
ever try to take something like that again.
No, that was horrible.
That was one of the worst experiences of my life. I also had to take a weeder course for vet school for some reason in my major, that literally its job is to make sure that nobody gets through to Auburn's vet school that doesn't need to be there. And it made sure that I passed, but it made sure that I was not going to vet school.
Oh, wow.
With that type of grade there. What about outside of academics, being on campus, being a student, things that stick out to you, experiences that you had there? What was that like?
Another really cool experience I had was I think it was the summer after my sophomore year of college. I actually had the privilege of doing an internship with Coach Pat Dye.
Oh my goodness. And I'm jealous right now.
It was incredible. It was someone that I hardly even know shared the opportunity on Facebook, and I saw it and I was like, wow, that's kind of cool. So I just applied for it. I had no idea what it meant, what I would be doing, anything. And I was just going to do it for that summer just so I could stay in Auburn, because I never wanted to go back home for the summer. I always wanted to be here. So I applied for it, and a funny story, I actually went out to his farm for the interview to be an intern, and he used to have a radio show, and the guy that hosted the radio show for him conducted the interviews. And so I got there, I went inside, and I was in the interview, and Coach Dye just walks in the door and he never sits in on the interviews at all. And he just comes in and sits down at the table and starts talking to the host of his radio show about stuff that he wanted to do in the future for his radio show. And he sat in there for about 30 minutes just talking about anything and everything, nothing that had to do with the interview. And then the girl who was interviewing after me is actually one of my really good friends now. Her dad used to play for Coach Dye, and she was out there waiting on her interview next. So he looks at me before he walks out of the room, and he was like, do you know who that is outside? And I was like, no, sir, I don't. He goes, well, her dad used to play for me, so good luck with this. And I was just like shocked. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to get this. Like, this is such a prestigious honor. And I was just freaking out. And so I left. I'm calling my mom. I'm like, well, this girl after me, her dad played for him, so I'm probably not going to get it. But it was a good experience, and it was cool that he sat in there the whole time. And then fast forward, I did get it, and she got it also. And now we're really good friends. We actually were roommates in Atlanta. So
Wow.
Funny how it all works out.
So you must have made a great impression to already have that kind of working against you a little bit.
Yes.
And the fact that he still, the fact that he was so blunt with you. I mean, we know that Pat Dye was a very blunt man, but
Yes.
you really only think of that with the football players, so to speak. And then like the fact that he was just that way with you,
Oh, yes.
it was kind of like, hey, I'm going to treat you just like the same way everybody. I'm going to be honest with you. Good luck with this.
He was an honest man, that's for sure.
The interesting thing, too, is we've also interviewed someone who worked out at the farm that he had out there with his Japanese maples back on episode 7, Casey Teal, and he echoed the same thing that you did, that he would just meet people where they were and that he would just be honest with them and just, treat them like he wanted to be treated, even if it was sometimes a little bit of that tough love. He seemed to love to coach people, even if it wasn't like football related for some reason.
I think it was his favorite thing to just coach people in life. He used to say all the time he would love to teach a class at Auburn where he could just sit there and talk about life. That's all he wanted to do.
All right, well let's try to pin that down. I'm gonna push you to it. So if you had to pick one class and you had to give it a title for Coach Pat Dye to have taught at Auburn, what would it be?
Oh gosh, this is a tough one. I feel like it has to be good to live up to him. No pressure.
Well, he'd probably make it good regardless of what it was.
That's true. Gosh, I don't know. And honestly, it would probably just be Coach Pat Dye's life lessons.
Hey, we can work with that, or statistical analysis of warfare or something like that.
Yes.
That'd probably be something. And it probably would have to do nothing to do with statistics. It'd just be about this play in football and why it would work on the battlefield or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Take me a little bit inside Pat Dye, the man. And obviously this is a very, still raw time for the Auburn family after losing him only a few months back. And, we're all very sad about that still. But obviously we have so many fond memories of him in his heart. And so when I get a chance to talk to someone who actually was there with him, worked with him in some capacity, I really want to take advantage of this. So just, if you could talk to me about like who Pat Dye was and some things that stuck out to you, what would those be?
Growing up, my grandfather on my mom's side passed away before I was born. And then my grandfather on my dad's side passed away when I was very young. So I didn't really have that figure in my life. And I never realized that it was a void until I met Coach Dye. And like I mentioned before, I thought I was going to do this internship for a semester. I thought that I might get to meet him twice, and that was that. But just from after that interview, when he said, good luck with this, and I made it, and we got to spend so many days together, and we just instantly became best friends. And like I said, I never knew that I had a void missing that grandfather figure in my life, and he very quickly became that. And I have to pinch myself sometimes and remind myself how lucky I am that that is the person that I got to spend 3 years with. And he really is just an incredible person. And he'll be honest and he'll tell you straight up like it is, but he would do anything for anyone, and especially anything for anybody in the Auburn family.
I mean, that's kind of what the picture we have of him. So when I hear someone actually echo that same sentiment, that makes me feel good that it's not just a caricature, that Pat Dye was this mystical figure that we all love to think about.
Right.
And we're not saying that he was a perfect man. Nobody is. But the fact that he loved people so much, so much that he would tell you how it is, especially if it was bad. But he loved enough to invest in people, to give them opportunities. And he obviously saw something in you. And it sounds like he made your life so much better in those 3 years.
Yes, he did. A funny story, he has his Japanese maples, and I used to take my dog with me to his farm whenever I would go out there. And one day, apparently, she knocked a limb off of one of the trees. And I can't remember where I was or what I was doing, but we left and then came back the next day, and on my desk was the limb with a sticky note on it that said, dog. That's all it said. And I was like, uh-oh. I felt so bad. But what's funny about it, and I didn't even think about this until honestly a couple of months ago, around the time that he passed away, we were talking about stories about him, and me and my dad were talking about it, and he was like, you know what? He used to get after football players all day long. That was his career. But he could not even look you in the face and tell you that your dog broke one of his trees. He had to leave you a sticky note. Then all it said was dog on it.
Well, I think that was probably y'all's relationship. He would be honest with you, but he also maybe saw you. You kind of saw him as a grandfatherly figure. Maybe he saw you almost as a granddaughterly figure. And, as much as we want to be tough on it's hard sometimes, those people that we really care about, to directly get in front of them and coach them up. I'm just going to coach you from a distance here or through somebody else, but it's coming from me, just so you know.
It was hilarious.
So what's the deal with Japanese maples and Coach Dye? Like, I mean, they look pretty. I'm not knocking them anyway, but I've always been fascinated with Japanese maples. Casey shared a little bit with that about us, but I mean, do you think they're that awesome of a tree?
I think they're gorgeous, but honestly, I don't know anything else about them. I stuck with, when I was there, I was more of the marketing social media side. So I got to see them and kind of listen to the people that were working with the trees. But yeah, I still don't know much, unfortunately.
So when you say marketing and social media with this internship, what type of things would you do for him?
I would go to the radio show with him, write down quotes that he would say that we could later post, make bios of his guests, take pictures, videos. Whenever he would go to speaking engagements, I would usually drive him and do the same thing, take pictures and notes. Really just kind of his right-hand woman, I guess you would say, making sure he was there on time most of the time, where he was supposed to be, those kind of things.
Yeah. Yeah, so you basically, were the person that was responsible for getting him everywhere, but also kind of capturing some of those great moments, even outside of the, you're with him during the time he's not coaching anymore and he's doing other things.
Yes.
And I can only imagine some of the great quotes, probably some of them very funny at times that you had to do. Is there one that sticks out in your mind that you can remember? I know that's a lot to go back through that remember.
Yeah, no, I wish that I could remember the funny ones, but of course, in those moments, that wasn't when I had my phone, so I would never write them down. It was those that just happened randomly. But there was one, I actually still have all of my notes in my phone from all of his radio shows and stuff, which I'm very thankful that I kept. And I was looking back at them before this, and there was one that I had, and I don't know if he got this from somewhere else or if he came up with it on his own. But I remember we were standing in the parking lot after one of his shows one day talking about graduating and being a senior. And I'm sure you can relate, and others as well. Once you get to that point, you kind of start freaking out a little bit. Did I make the right decision? Am I in the right major? When I graduate, am I going to have a job? Where should I live? What should I do? Those kind of things. So we were standing out in the parking lot talking about that one day, and I was just talking about how I was worried and nervous. And he told me, well, everybody's scared. Everybody's in the same position that you're in. But you have to have a little courage too, because courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the control of fear. And like I said, I don't know if he got that from somewhere else, but that's what he told me that day. And it stuck with me, that even though we're all a little scared for the next step of life, you have to have courage too to overcome it.
We'll just say that he said it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think all quotes are basically variations on what we've heard from other people.
Exactly.
Because we all are the product of the people that are in our lives, whether it's parents or surrogate grandparents in the way of Pat Dye for you. We are just products of the environment and the people that come into our lives. And obviously we have a lot of control in shaping that ourselves, but it's hard not to be affected, and a lot of times in good ways, by those special people in our lives. So I really appreciate you sharing with us about your special relationship with Pat Dye, because for someone like me that always wanted to meet him, and I would see him at Tiger Walk, or I was near him at times, but I never got a chance to actually shake his hand, and so that kills me to this day. So this is like an honor for me to get to talk to someone again who walked with Pat Dye and got to see the real Pat Dye, but also got to admire the man that he was and will continue to be in Auburn history.
Yes. Well, it's an honor for me to be able to share it. So thank you.
We talked a lot about football here. Is there any other Auburn sports or that you got involved in or liked a lot while you were at campus or even after before?
There weren't any others that I got personally involved with, but obviously basketball has become really fun.
Mm-hmm.
So the Final Four run was my senior year. So that was a really cool experience to be able to kind of dive into a different sport like we all do with football.
So let me get this straight here. Your first Iron Bowl was a kick six. You get to be a Tiger recruiter. You get to spend personal time working for Pat Dye. Then your senior year is the Final Four run. What did you do to get all these things right?
I don't know, but I am very thankful for it.
You have been very blessed, and I am extremely jealous of you.
I had an incredible Auburn experience.
So you mentioned that you moved to Atlanta, and if I have my information correct, you actually spent a little time working or interning at the College Football Hall of Fame. Is that right?
Yes, I did.
So talk to me about that just a little bit. I've been there myself, and it's pretty cool. My opinion, Auburn's a little underrepresented there. Of course. Of course, right? So, what do you think about their representation there? Or where can they put Auburn in more? What do you think about it?
I think it is a little underrepresented, but I also just growing up an Auburn fan, I think of Auburn as the top. Everybody has to love Auburn. It's the best. But then moving to Atlanta and being surrounded by Georgia fans, I was like, whoa, culture shock. Having to defend myself. I was the only Auburn fan that worked there, or at least in the marketing side. So I wasn't used to that. I'm used to being surrounded by Auburn fans, and then I had to take a turn for being surrounded by Georgia fans and kind of having to defend myself a little bit.
Yeah. I live here now, and it's tough, man.
It is.
These Georgia fans, they live in a world unto themselves, and it's hard to reason with them sometimes. So working with some people that are, I'm sure even more fanatical about their football in the College Football Hall of Fame, I bet that was interesting there. I do think, and I know you don't currently work there right now, I think you could pull some strings and have them pull that Auburn helmet down and that giant wall just a little bit lower so it's not so high up where nobody can see them.
You don't have to search so hard for it. I think it should be right in the middle, front and center.
Right
Maybe
there.
A little bigger than all the other ones too.
Kind of what I'm thinking of. And I know they obviously talk a lot about Bo Jackson being there and the Heisman. I think maybe personally, now that unfortunately Pat Dye has passed, and I know there was some stuff there about him if I remember it correctly, but maybe they can do a little bit more, because when you really consider Pat Dye and his implications on the state of Alabama, which is probably the most important state in college football, at least in the modern era, I personally think he deserves much more representation there than he's gotten. So I think that's what I'm going to assign you with, is to work on that. Again, knowing that you're not there anymore, but I think you could pull some strings.
I can see what I can do. I actually got to go to the College Football Hall of Fame for the first time with him before I worked there. So that was a really cool experience. And he's just very humble and doesn't really, think of himself as this football coach that was so great. He's just a regular person in his head to everyone else. So it was funny when we walked around the exhibits, the one of him, being in the Hall of Fame. He was just kind of like, okay, cool. Kept walking, no big deal. I'm in the Hall of Fame.
He doesn't need anybody to toot his own horn. He knows what he accomplished.
Yeah. He looked at it for a second and was like, okay, I'm good.
He's like, I live that. There's no poster. There's no marquee. There's nothing that can paint this picture better for me than actually having lived it. So Of course he's going to be humble about it. That's cool that you actually got to not only work there, but you got to walk through it with him and see that through his eyes. Did he take any shots at Alabama? Did that come out?
I don't think so, but him and Bear Bryant were really close, so he always had much love for him and respect. So not too many things came out about Alabama.
Well, at least what things that you know of, but
yes, that he said to me or in front of me.
Probably keeping those at bay while you were around, you being the surrogate granddaughter and all that.
Right.
All right, so we covered a lot for you. We've covered, growing up as a Auburn fan with the wayward father. We've talked about you deciding to go to Auburn and being a recruiter, spending time with Pat Dye, and then some things that you've been doing afterward. Before we get into our rapid fire questions, what do you kind of plan on doing with the future? Obviously, we can't control what happens, but like, what's your goals? What are you going to be trying to do with that degree?
My goals as of now is I'm going to take the LSAT coming up here in November, so it's very soon, and hopefully go to law school starting next fall.
Wow. So you're actually going to be one of those those lawyers we talk about sometimes.
Yeah. Hopefully not one you talk about in a bad way.
No. We'll be one of those lawyers when we finally nail Alabama for some of the cheating that they've been doing. We'll call you. Because you won't be biased at all.
Oh, no.
That's cool. I'm glad that you're kind of finding an area to move into that's interests you. And it sounds like you'll still be able to use not just your degree, but the experiences that you've had, obviously learning to deal with people, communicate with them, leading that organization. And obviously, dealing with a figurehead like Pat Dye, it sounds like you probably be well suited for that role. So good luck with that.
Yes. Thank you so much.
All right, now is the time that everybody loves. This is what we call not so rapid fire questions. The reason it's not so rapid fire is because usually people want to explain themselves. So feel free if there's something that sticks out of like, you're like, I need to explain myself here, because there are some tough questions.
Okay.
You can do that. It's not like you have to just breeze through all of them very, very fast. But they're about 12 questions, some this or that, or choose this type of things. And it'll probably give us a good rounding out of you as an Auburn family member.
Okay.
So question number 1, orange or blue?
Ooh. Okay, I would have to pick orange because I'm weird and I don't like to wear blue shirts with blue jeans.
That is so weird because I've had the exact opposite. Not the
Really?
blue jean, but just the whole, like, I don't look good in the opposite, that other color. So like that's just funny that everybody's got this style choice that's like, oh, this looks gaudy on me. But then somebody else will say, oh, this looks great on me. So orange for you is what
Yes.
you chose. All right. So we've got one in the orange column. Question 2, it's a tough one. Aubie or War Eagle?
Ooh. I think I would have to pick Aubie.
You are safe from the minions of Aubie. I promise you, they would have come after you if you hadn't chose Aubie. He loves the War Eagle. He loves his War Eagles, but Aubie is...
He's just so fun.
He is. I don't know what it was as a kid. I always wanted a picture with Aubie. I used to be terrified of mascots. Would never want to go, but Aubie was always the one that I wanted to go up and hug and stuff like that. There's just something so inviting about him.
There is.
And if you look back at some of the costumes, like in the Hall of Fame over there at the arena now, you're like, oh, wow, he was terrifying back in the
He did used to look scary. I'm glad they changed him.
All right, question 3. And this one we've kind of altered. It used to be the Auburn fight song or Glory, Glory to All Auburn, but everybody obviously chose the fight song over that, even though I wanted somebody to choose Glory, Glory to Auburn. Instead, I want to ask you this. What's your favorite line or word or phrase from the Auburn fight song?
Ooh. Okay, I got to say it in my head really quick. Probably ever to conquer, never to yield.
I'm not surprised by that one. It's a very like
Is it common?
Well, it's not even so much common. It's just very robust. Like it says who we are, and
Yes.
It says more than just football in it too. Number 4, your favorite Auburn athletics program.
Football by far.
I'm not surprised by that. Number 5, your favorite Auburn athlete.
I feel like I have to say Bo Jackson just because my dad's name is Bo Jackson and we always joke about it. So I'm going to go with him.
So hold on. We do need to go back to that for a second. And I'm ashamed it took me till now to say that. Did his parents intend that, or was it just they just wanted to name him Bo?
No. So actually his full name is James Davis Jackson III. So his grandfather, they nicknamed him Jimbo, and then his father, they nicknamed Jim. So he was left with Bo.
Okay. Well, it's a very unfortunate name for him.
It is.
But, obviously, maybe one day he'll realize that his namesake is where he belongs. And,
I think he secretly likes it.
I think, look, let's take the orange and blue off of Bo Jackson. He's the greatest athlete of all time.
Exactly.
How can you not at least admire him? Even Pat Dye could admire Bear Bryant and the work he did for Alabama. He can admire that athlete.
Yes.
Question 6. This one's going to be easy for you, I think. Kind of leading you a little bit. Your favorite Auburn coach?
Pad Thai.
Don't need to spend much more time on that.
No.
You've made it very clear how you feel about Pad Thai. Question 7, your favorite Auburn non-athletics person or celebrity. So a little clarification. This can be a family member. This can be a celebrity. It can be a teacher that you had at Auburn, or just a friend that when I think of Auburn outside of sports, this is who I think of.
I would say my sister, just because she went before me at Auburn and had a lot of influence on me going to Auburn, and then also helped me and supported me and encouraged me throughout my time while I was going through college.
That's awesome. Auburn's a family thing, and so it's hard to break away from those family answers.
It is.
We think about that, so that's great. Question 8, your favorite Auburn building.
Definitely not Haley, that's for sure.
Someone's got to love Haley. Come on, just from the novelty factor of it.
I don't want to say Sanford because I don't want to pick the common answer, and I've never actually been in it. Probably the Student Center.
Well, we spend a lot of time there, whether it's eating.
Exactly. I was going to say the food. All the food's there, and Starbucks. So
I was going to ask, the stereotype is that the college, co-ed likes their Starbucks. So, I was wondering if that was going to be the place that you kind of congregated around the most. Was it Chick-fil-A or Starbucks you went to most?
Probably Starbucks. I am a coffee addict, and that is definitely where the majority of my Tiger Card money went.
Oh, it definitely would have been Chick-fil-A for me. And I was actually there, I was there for the first year of it. So when that happened, that was like heaven on earth for me. Give me Chick-fil-A every day and twice on Sunday, except you can't do it. Well, speaking of food, question 9, your favorite Auburn place to eat?
Ooh, that's a tough one. There's so many good ones. I would have to say Vendatories.
Vendatories. I have to share that. That's a new one for me.
It's an Italian restaurant, and it is, the Bent Creek exit.
Okay. Yep.
And then behind, there's that Wendy's. I can't think of what else is around it. It's across the road from Academy and Sam's and all of that. Where that Wendy's is, back in there. It's called Vendatories.
Is actually, I've been there, and I think it's changed names now, actually.
Oh, maybe it has.
But if that's the place that I'm thinking of, if we're thinking of the same place and just different names, then yeah, I agree with you. That's a great place.
It is so good. And I love Italian food, so that's my favorite.
That's the first time we've had that one here, so that's another recommendation for the audience to try. And it's not necessarily it's not on campus. It's a little bit more away from it. So
yes,
I always like to hear those examples of, we think of the Mama Goldbergs. We think of, all these other places downtown, Mellow Mushroom, Blue Bagel, all this stuff. And they're great. And I love going to them, but I always love to hear examples of outside the campus spectrum. So that's great.
Yes.
Question 10, your favorite Auburn tradition. It can be sports, non-sports, a personal tradition for you that nobody else would have, but your favorite Auburn tradition.
I would have to say the eagle flying. I think it's just so cool. And I've been around, obviously, recruiting people who aren't Auburn fans or don't come from Auburn families and haven't seen it their whole lives, or people from the opposing teams. And everyone, no matter where you come from or what team you root for, is always just in awe.
Yeah, it's something that I think you could appreciate whether you're wearing that crimson crap or not. You feel like, okay, that's – I may not act
cool.
like it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's hard to beat the War Eagle flight because it's uniquely Auburn.
I agree.
Question 11, your favorite Auburn memory. When I think of Auburn, I think of this memory.
I would have to say, my first thought, I want to say kick 6, just because it was such a thrilling and exciting time. But now, after graduating from Auburn, and I look back on it, I really just think of Coach Dye as a whole. It was just one of the cool experiences that really made an impact on my life forever. And one of those things that I'll never forget.
Yeah, you'll have those memories that none of us will ever have. And as I've said before, I'm super jealous of you. And that's one of the problems of doing this show, is that I find all these moments that I never experienced. And now I have FOB, fear, or was it not FOB, that's fear of birds, fear of missing out.
Yes.
That one. FOB is what my wife has. She fears birds except the War Eagle. And even she fears that. But question 12, it's the last one we have here. I want you to describe Auburn to me in one word besides family.
Home. Is that too close to family?
No, I'll take home.
Okay.
It's one that I probably resonate with a lot, even though I only spent 4 years there myself. But I think it's the place that we look back to, and it doesn't matter how long you've been away from it, even if it's 30 seconds, 30 years, when you come back to campus or the town, it just feels right. So I think home's a great way to describe it.
It does.
So if you had to kind of wrap up what it's like to be in the Auburn family, and just kind of get all that last bit out for you for your Auburn roots, what would your final words be here?
I think the Auburn family means to me just comfort, and like I said, home. You never have to do anything alone. You're always supported and you're always encouraged, no matter where you are in the world.
That's awesome. It's a great way to end it there. Taylor, thank you so much for joining me here to walk through your Auburn roots, to make me further jealous of someone within the Auburn family. I really appreciate you spending some time with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It was an honor.
Thank you for being here. And we'll be back with another edition very soon. So keep listening out there and keep looking for those opportunities for you to be on this show and share your Auburn roots. That's all we have for you on episode 17. Until we talk to you again, War Eagle.